Dooku Jedi Lost. Is this a sweeping tale that belongs in the Jedi archives, or is it just a cheap fetch quest that is exploiting a popular Star Wars character? Stay tuned and find out next. Where should I start reading? What is canon versus legends? When does the story begin? The answers to these questions is right here on Star Wars Timeline. Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're finally talking about Dooku Jedi Lost, a title that I really wanted to talk with you about. I finished it late last year, I got the audiobook version, I got the paper novel as well. This is a book written by Cavan. It was originally released as audio-only book in April 30th of 2019, with cover illustration by McBride. You guys should understand that this is a part of a Star Wars canon novels, and it takes place 23 years before Battle of Yavin or before Episode 4. So naturally, this is even before the Star Wars prequels. Quick spoiler alert. Before we start getting into the storyline here, please understand that this is a full spoiler-on review. I will discuss the characters, I will talk about the synopsis as we go along. So if you don't want any spoilers, I strongly advise you go and check out the book first. And I think it's very important to note here that you should listen to the audio version. When you pick up the paper book, it is actually a transcript of the audio drama, and it doesn't translate very well. It is honestly intended as the audiobook, and this is the full experience that you get. It's a fully voice acted, as a whole cast of prominent voice actors, as a sweeping musical score, sound effects to go along. If you want the whole deal, I strongly recommend you pick up the audio version. Anyway, without further ado, let's start talking about the storyline. Like many popular sci-fi stories and other Star Wars books, this radio drama is split into two separate timelines. In present time, we follow Asajj Ventress. She's on a mission to discover Count Dooku's estranged sister, Jenza. So en route to her mission, she learns about Count Dooku's past through hollow messages, his personal journal, which was left there not by any accident, and also first-hand accounts where she actually interacts and speaks to him directly. Asajj mostly is used in the story as a plot device. We obviously learned a little bit more about her personal history and what her relationship is with Count Dooku, but we mostly use her to try to understand the full portrait of who this Count is, what he is as a Jedi and beyond. And there's also a very interesting dialogue happening within Asajj Ventress with her former master Kynaric. I don't believe I've encountered this Jedi ever before, so I want to say that he is an invention for this specific title. And he's also a very interesting plot device because he predates chronologically Qui-Gon Jinn's resurgence as the spectral form, as Master Yoda says at the end of The Return of the Jedi, that one of our friends has made contact from the netherrealm of the Force. Here, it's a different example. Even though the Master doesn't appear to Asajj Ventress as a ghost apparition, he still talks to her. And it's up to the audience, the reader, to figure out whether it's really taking place or whether it's Asajj Ventress's twisted personality. I personally interpret it as that aspect of the story as the inner conflict, the fight between the good and evil inside of her mind. And for me, honestly, this Kynaric was quite literal because there's too much history involved. And even though he appears at the times where she has to make a moral judgment, he's still there reminding her of the past, reminding her of who she is. There's some sort of impulse coming outside of her as a character that tries to influence her. That's why I interpret him personally as a separate character, as somebody who is real, a Jedi who is reaching out to her from the netherrealm of the Force. And before we continue talking about the story, guys, I have to once again make a strong emphasis on the production of this audiobook. Historically, I mostly read Star Wars titles. I generally don't listen to audiobooks, even though I have some prior experience with the Star Wars New Jedi Order. I've listened to some audiobooks in late 90s and early 2000s with the Legends books. Here from the Star Wars canon, this book was not available in print at all. It was meant to be as a radio drama first and foremost, and that's the way I decided to check it out. Even though I picked up the physical copy of the book first, I told myself, you know what, Ben? Hold on a second. This doesn't look right. It reads like a movie transcript. Something is off. Besides, all of my Facebook friends who are part of the Star Wars Timeline group, they were saying, Ben, if you're going to check out this story, please do the audiobook. I listened to their advice, And boy, guys, I'm so thankful that you suggested I do an audiobook version. It's completely engrossing. And the reason is the sound design, the haunting musical score, which features prominent musical pieces from the Clone Wars show, from the prequel era, from the traditional, original trilogy, and variations of those themes as well. But the selling point of this production were not just its story, but how it was performed by voice actors. I thought that Ewan Morton as Count Dooku was completely flawless, guys. From his earlier years when we hear younger version of Count Dooku, when he's an adult, and later on when he becomes the Jedi Master and the Jedi Council, flawlessly. He is able to convey a very layered, deep character who goes through a lot of personal inner conflict. Tremendous job. Asajj Ventress, portrayed by Orla Cassidy, tremendous. I absolutely love her. You believe that she's Asajj Ventress from the second you hear this voice actress speak. There's this kind of twisted, darker, noir version of Harley Quinn from DC Comics. Obviously, this is Star Wars, but there's this kind of twisted, broken shell of a young woman that she depends on Dooku to lead her. She depends on somebody to anchor her life because she seems completely lost. And en route to Sereno, she has this task ahead of her, one clear thing that she sees in her life to perform this task for her master, but she's also trying to understand where he's coming from and who she is as a person. And is she willing to step all the way through to the darkness, embrace it, and become his apprentice? Because throughout the story, even though we don't get to hear a lot from Asajj Ventress, there's this inner conflict theme that is constantly going out. So she's en route, and in the beginning of this novel, there's this gripping family drama that unfolds. We understand that Count Dooku, as an infant, was the son of Count Goro of Sereno, and he has actually extended family. He has sister Jenza and brother Emil. And upon his birth, his father was so embarrassed and fearful of his son, which is a classical grief motif, right? When the father is so fearful of his children, like Uranus, the god, the primal god, he swallows his children. In this instance, Counts of Sereno, he abandons his infant son and he leaves him in the wilderness to die, but he does alert the Jedi Order to come and pick him up. So the Jedi take him and they bring him to the Jedi Academy at Coruscant, where he spends his youth training as a Jedi Padawan, and we follow with a time skip. We return to Sereno with now a young adult teenage Count Dooku with his friend in Tau, Sifo Dyas, under the tutelage of Jedi Master Yoda. Even though Yoda has not announced who his student will be, he's overseeing this couple along with other upper Jedi counselors coming to this planet. And I felt that the time jumps in the story are very effective because we spent enough time in each scene in this younger years following Count Dooku and later on to understand what the story is trying to tell us, and we effectively skipped the unnecessary bits to get to the later parts. And all the events that take place in Count Dooku's earlier life, they resurface, they come full circle, and they affect his future decisions and the time when he's a young and capable Jedi, and later when he becomes the Count of Sereno, when he becomes a Jedi counselor. So that was very effective done. And I thought that the connection that he has with the family is a very powerful story motif. Because generally what we meet other Jedi like Mace Windu or Obi-Wan Kenobi or Qui-Gon, we know nothing of their past. So the fact that they were taken as infants and raised by the Jedi doesn't seem so bad. It is entirely different in this book where we understand the full history of why Dooku was abandoned, of what makes him want to relate to his family, and what eventually drives him off from the Jedi Council. I felt it was very powerful and dynamic storytelling, which goes sort of and challenges the status quo of what we know about the Jedi and who they are supposed to be. So young Dooku is at this showcase of Galaxy Fair where this event is happening, and he stumbles into this young teenage girl Genza, and they automatically connect with one another. And Dooku begins to realize that she is his little sister. And the way that the encounter is introduced, it almost makes me believe that she's force sensitive as well. Because even though they don't know each other at first, they have to introduce one another. They know from the beginning that they share a common past. I was like, that is really cool. That is very interesting. And I don't know, for some reason, I always rooted for Dooku's emotional response to his sister, his connection to her, and it's a good thing. And, you know, as a person who wasn't big on Star Wars prequels, I never understood the celibate Jedi Order where they are not allowed to have bonds and family relationships. It didn't make any sense to me because I grew up with the original trilogy where it's a story of a family. Luke, his sister, their father, and the tragedy of never seeing their mom. It's a story of a family. So I never fully embraced the idea of celibate Jedi. And this is exactly what Kevin Scott does in this book. He challenges that idea of the Jedi. He says that, look, it's sometimes it's good for a teenage boy to reconnect with his family and share these beautiful, powerful emotions like love. I really, really enjoyed that a lot. And as they are getting away from the fair, they have their little misadventure. She takes him on a little tour around the Sereno capital, and they go near the they venture off to the Great Assembly building where they see this carving on the wall, like a mural of this Tirataka, legendary slumbering dragon of Sereno, this beast. And it's followed up immediately by an earthquake, and the teenagers are rescued by the Jedi, where Dooku tried to demonstrate his Jedi powers. Obviously, he fails, but there's some sort of connection that he makes with that legend, which, once again, I thought was so beautifully done. With such haunting music playing in the background, these sounds of a slumbering beast coming from the underground, where he learns about this fascinating legend of the Tirataka. Later in the novel, we learn it's a beast that the ancient Sith invaders who conquered Sereno used as their mounts, and you know that's what Dooku subconsciously makes a kind of overture to. And later on, Dooku realizes that he reawakens this beast. Beautiful stuff. It introduces a lot of Jedi lore and Sith lore and a lot of ancient history of Sereno. Just excellent, excellent stuff. I really like that a lot. So once again, Dooku is spirited away back to Coruscant. He's not allowed to form bonds and relationships. Yet Genza, being the forceful young woman that she is, she sneaks this little communication device to Dooku and she says, please contact me. I want to stay in touch with you. And again, it sort of breaks my heart a little bit knowing in afterthought who Count Dooku becomes, because it's something that's good. It's something that young people should experience. Love, family, and knowing that somebody out there cares for him, especially in light of what his father has done to him by completely abandoning him. His youngest sister wants to connect and love him and know that she has an older brother at her side. And I really loved this parallel that we see throughout the novel of comparing Dooku to this Terataka dragon, this noble beast. It's basically a literal manifestation of the dark side, and it represents the inner struggle, the inner demons that Dooku has to constantly wrestle with through his formative years as he learns to be a Jedi, as he learns to make sacrifice, but also begins to understand where the Jedi Council is failing and where he personally needs to take charge and start making decisions for himself, for his sister, for his planet, and so forth. Just unbelievably layered and powerful storytelling from Kevin Scott. There's so much nuance, which I miss from a lot of Star Wars storytelling, to be honest with you guys. And it doesn't just have to do with modern Star Wars or the sequels, which we can all criticize. They were lacking a little bit in the nuance, but also in Star Wars prequels as well. The films themselves, I argue the point that the movies were made far better with the expanded universe, and all the novels pertaining to the Clone Wars era made that story so much better. The Clone Wars show made that trilogy so much more realized, and same is happening with this book. He's tapping into the familiar territory of pre-Clone War era Star Wars and he's expanding on it. And I applaud Kevin Scott for being so bold, playing around with familiar elements and making it fresh and exciting for somebody like myself, who only became a fan of the Clone era content much later, thanks to all the comic books and novels that came out. So that was once again brilliant stuff. That parallel between the Beast and Count Dooku was fantastic. So he communicates with Jenza and he receives a message from her. Once again, we have time skips, and once again, you never feel lost in the story. You always follow that there's a passage of time, and they don't always announce it through the commentators or narrators of the story. You know, you sound a much older version of Count Dooku and Cypher Diaz. You know that they're like young adults in their 18s and 20s there, and the story is completely changed. The canvas of the plot line surrounding them is completely different. You understand that there's a passage of time. He receives a message from his sister Jenza stating that their mother has died. And Count Dooku asks to come visit and attend his mother's funeral. He goes, tags along with Cypher Diaz, and they come to Sereno. And as they arrive, there's this labor protest, and they're saying that the Count is not doing right by his people, and he's using machinery and droids to give all the jobs to them and not enough to people. Anyway, there's some kind of altercation that comes out, and Count Dooku is using, well, Dooku at that point, sorry guys, Dooku is using his force powers to try to prevent it and sort of demonstrate his powers. And already we see a seed of bravado and that, not egotistical, but that confidence and cockiness in him. It's like, I can do this. I can take charge of the situation. I will resolve it. I am a Jedi. But it misfires, and his force abilities that he uses, they kind of uproot the mother's coffin, and the mom falls out. It completely disrupts this very tragic kind of like scene where you see like the mother's body fall out from the corpse, and it's completely terrible. And his family resents him for that. His brother hates him. His father says, see, you should not have come back. Again, once again, a tragic theme there. And the only one that has his back is his sister, Jenza. Now he's completely cut off from communicating with her. And you sort of understand that years pass without them exchanging any words. There's really, really interesting theme. There's this Master Costana, who is a very maverick Jedi master who taps into trying to understand the dark side secrets, trying to understand the Sith, and her, along with the two Jedi Padawans, Dooku and Cypher Diaz, they have this dark ritual, which completely took me by surprise. Like, whoa! So we had some council members and higher-ranking Jedi who didn't quite follow suit with the rest of them. They didn't follow the status quo, and they were saying, look, we need to be prepared in case the Sith strike. We're unprepared. We haven't fought them for a millennia. We haven't seen any Sith. We have to understand who our potential enemy is. And such a dark and foreboding scene there. And they experience this very painful ritual, but they learn to master their pain. And once again, I'm like, oh man, this once again taps into who Count Dooku will become later on as a Sith Lord, as a Lord Tyrannus, because he's made to endure this pain. And it's a slow and very convincing progression of his character. You know, we're not having Anakin having bad dreams and just transform. I was a good guy during the first part of the Revenge of the Sith, and second half of the movie, he drops down to his knees. Yes, Master, teach me. It's a lot more nuanced here. There's a lot more calculated scenes leading you up to the events, which will show you who Count Dooku will be. So that was very, very effective, very great stuff. Once again, years pass. Dooku now becomes Jedi Master, and Rael Averross and Qui-Gon Jinn become his students. And I got to point out, Rael Averross, one of my favorite Jedi, also a maverick, also somebody who is like almost, if you watch Kung Fu movies, he's the type of Buddhist monks who drinks wine and eats chicken even though they're forbidden to, but he's still part of the Buddhist temple, and he's always the master who trains his student. This is the case with Rael Averross. He's a kind of maverick Jedi who later becomes a master in the Master of Apprentice, a friend to Qui-Gon, who is a complete contrast, completely different, non-conservative at all, and he sleeps with women. There's so much things. I know it pissed a lot of fans off, but I really like that because you have one Jedi who is completely opposite of what the general notion is. And we learned that there is an accident happening at the Dragonfire Air Rally happening at Coruscant. His brother Ramil has an accident, and Dooku is bound on finding the culprits. Him and Qui-Gon Jinn, his student in Tau, they capture the saboteur, and they uncover the plot which leads all the way up to the Jedi Council member, which once again is so daring and so interesting and different. I really like that. But there's one scene that comes to mind where Count Dooku always seems to push the boundaries between the light and the dark side. The way that he interrogates the saboteur, and I believe he force chokes him for a bit, and he does something, I believe it's force choke, where even Qui-Gon Jinn says, "Master, stop. What are you doing? You're going overboard. We're not supposed to do that. We're Jedi." Of course, Dooku doesn't kill him, and he tells his student, like, "I understand that you're challenging me. That's good. You need to think outside of the box." And it sort of becomes, the book also functions as making us understand who Qui-Gon Jinn becomes later in Phantom Menace. A Jedi who doesn't necessarily abide by the every word from the code. He's the one who tries to think for himself, and he teaches young Anakin also to trust his gut instinct first and foremost. Very independent. This is who Qui-Gon is because of Count Dooku. Once again, the influence of the master over his student. Very, very powerful stuff. And once again, the plot in regards to the Jedi Council member was also really, really cool. Once again, some time passes, and Dooku is reunited with Sister Jenza. He understands that his homeworld, Serena, is being invaded by these Abyssians, these off-worlders. And he goes and he appeals to the Jedi Councils, and he appeals to the Senate, and he says, "Look, we need help. Go and rescue my planet. This is what the Jedi are meant to do." And the Jedi Council denies him that. They tell him, "Look, the political situation is much more complex than you think. We have matters elsewhere to attend to. We can't just go and get involved. This way will involve the entire Republic, blah, blah, blah." They give him this kind of like extended excuse. And this is where we see that Dooku loses complete confidence in the Jedi Council because they're inept. They're unable to act on time. And this is actually the argument that I make in regards to the entire prequel trilogy. You know, if the entire Jedi Order with 10,000 year history and lore are unable to stop a single Sith, I don't care how powerful Palpatine is, I don't care that excuse which was devised later on that he hid himself in the Force, which was not explained in the films at all, it doesn't help matters. Jedi should be able to deal with all sort of menaces coming from the Sith. They should have for some foresight that something like hiding in the Force is a fact, and there might be other methods that they might use to smoke him out. Check out his profile. The Jedi constantly talk about how Counselor Palpatine is slowly assuming power, but they're not willing to do anything meaningful about that. It's just frustrated me to no end that the Jedi Order is so freaking useless in prequels. And here we see that. And once again, the author is not questioning George Lucas's vision for the films. He taps into that. And I like that. Once again, guys, it's not to say that what I believe is right. This is the way I interpreted the prequels. You might have a completely opposite view and say, "Ben, this is how he intended the story to be." I get that. I still don't like it. What I do like is how Kevin Scott is playing into that, is showing that, yes, Jedi Council is indeed weak and inept, and Count Dooku is right to leave it. Because once again, it almost feels like he is an independent entity between Emperor Palpatine and the Separatist army. And at the end of the story of the Revenge of the Sith, we almost feel like he wants to make a plea to Anakin, say, "Spare me and I'll tell you the whole truth. This is the Sith over here." This is the kind of persona that Dooku is. He's not entirely evil. He's not entirely good. He's somewhere in between. Anyway, the Jedi doesn't help him. They refuse. So Dooku, once again, He takes his friend Sifo Diaz and Costana, and the three of them go to Serena to try and see if they can help in any way. And of course, they see this strife happening on the planet. They make plans to take over, to help their friends, to help the family, while Asajj Ventress is looking for his sister Genza. And once again, the powerful themes. The story arc that begins early in the book, it comes full circle. It comes here, and we now see that this earthquake and Tirataka beast become very important part of the plot. We learned that his brother Ramil is the one who betrayed the family. He's the one who built the droid army, and he's the one who sort of made the off-worlders come so he can conquer them and take over the planet and say, see, I'm the liberator. This planet now belongs to me. Dooku summons the beast. He rides on top of Tirataka the way an ancient Sith Lord would. Guys, I cannot stress how powerful and engrossing and amazing that scene was. Just the music alone is so, so powerful. It makes you believe like Dooku is wrestling with the forces that are outside of his control. It's like the ultimate good and the ultimate evil, and all of that theater is playing on his home world, and he's ruled by emotion, but he also wants to be the Jedi and be dispassionate and cool. And honestly, the situation just spirals off, off his control. He's unable to control it. And enraged, he kills his brother. He has to put down the beast as well. And he claims to become the Count of Sereno, and he says goodbye to the Jedi Order. He says, Master Yoda, I have to leave. I submit my weapon. Again, the way that he parts with Yoda, I felt was so eloquently done. Dooku is not the type of character who would run off like a wounded beast, licking his wounds away from the Jedi Order and say, oh, I must find refuge. They will hunt me down. He goes to Yoda and he says, look, I'll not be a part of this anymore. Here's my weapon. I will relinquish the right to wear it. I am Jedi no longer. And this is the part of the book that completely made me have like chills on my body, guys, because the author is basically hearkening back to 2004 Sean Stewart novel, Star Wars The Dark Rendezvous, where Yoda's and Count Dooku's relationship is fully explored, and it takes place during the Clone Wars, where Yoda goes to meet Count Dooku to try to bring him back and win him over and get him back to the light side of the Force. And the fact that Kevin Scott very consciously is doing that, and it's paying homage to work that came before this canon, that is part of Star Wars Legends, is tremendous. I completely bow down to this author, saying huge thank you. As a huge Star Wars Legends and canon fan, to me, that was completely invaluable. This was the best part of the book because it's building on what came before. It's building on the story that George Lucas has created in Star Wars prequel movies. It's building on what Sean Stewart has created for the novel, The Dark Rendezvous. And it also encompasses all of Count Dooku's story arc that we see in the Clone Wars. And Kevin Scott is a caliber of author who plays around with all of these elements like a juggler in circus. He has no problem taking all of these elements, mixing them all together, and doing it so effectively in one coherent story that is both impactful, powerful, emotional, and delivered by just a beautiful cast of voice actors. At the end of the story, we see this once again, this climatic scene where Asajj Ventress finds his sister Genza, and her former master Kainek, he appeals to her for the last time. And she sees this vision where she's being pulled on one side by her former master, on the other side by this twisted form of Dooku that even she doesn't recognize. He's completely twisted. He's completely dark. And we see him, I think it's a scene from the Clone Wars animated series where he's sitting behind his desk and there's papers all over the place. And he sees how the Clone Wars is coming in at the end, and he's completely powerless to affect it. And he's frustrated that the clone army is winning over, and he couldn't do anything to respond to that situation. Beautiful, beautiful dark scene. She sees this twisted vision, and in the end, she realizes that she's broken inside. and she realizes that Asajj, she wouldn't be able to survive without Count Dooku. And even Sister Jenza says, like, look, Dooku, I don't realize you. I don't recognize my brother anymore. This dark hooded man that she sees a hollow recording of. He's twisting your mind. He's corrupting your soul. Please stop. Don't go this way. But once again, it's too late for Dooku, and it's also too late for Asajj Ventress. And by the end of the book, she succumbs to the dark side, and she becomes his disciple of the Darth Tyrannus. Guys, again, the reason that I'm stressing that I wasn't a huge prequel fan is I want you to see what sort of effect this particular book had on me. It's probably one of the greatest Star Wars stories I've ever experienced. I kid you not. Like, I've been reading Star Wars books for 20 plus years, video games, Legends novels. I've read a bunch of Star Wars canon books that I enjoy a lot. I embrace everything Star Wars. There were things that I disliked about Star Wars Legends era. There's some things I dislike about Star Wars canon. I pick and choose what I enjoy. And to me, the Clone Wars era shined in the show, and it shined in the books. And this particular book, Dooku Jedi Lost, is the very best of Star Wars Clone Wars era. It is the very best of Star Wars storytelling. It takes a character that I didn't care about in the films, and I didn't want to know anything about in the films, because I felt prequels were polluted by too many villains. You have this cartoonish looking goofy ass character in General Grievous. You have this Count Dooku played by the amazing Christopher Lee, which I felt was completely underused. And he's just there waving the stick and looking elegant and gallant, but he doesn't affect the plotline in any meaningful way, for me personally. Here in this book, Kevin Scott completely turns it around. He makes him essential to Star Wars. He makes him such an interesting and powerful beacon of light, this source of adoration for the Jedi Council, who completely succumbs to the dark side. It's very tragic, it's very touching, and it's very, very convincing transformation, unlike the transformation of Anakin Skywalker in Revenge of the Sith. Here, I completely believed it. Thanks to all the voice actors who put so much nuance, so much texture and emotion into their lines, I can't stress enough how beautiful this book is. Once again, guys, I strongly advise you check out the audio version of it. Don't go to the written book, only if you want to have it for collecting purposes. I also purchased a copy just so it could sit on my shelf there, but I enjoyed the audiobook the most. Anyway, guys, thanks a lot for watching. I really appreciate you sticking with me and supporting my channel, but I also would love to hear what you have to say about this book in the comment section below. If I were to rate it, as I generally rate my books on the scale from 1 to 4, this one honestly gets a 5. Guys, this is completely blew my mind, just like this. Amazing from start to finish. I was savoring every scene, every moment, every musical composition. I was savoring for the Dooku character to come out. I was waiting for Sifo Dyas to reemerge. I was waiting to hear a little bit more of Qui-Gon Jinn. From small casts to the pivotal characters in the book, everybody made some impact. Everybody was purposefully used, and the narrative constantly moved forward. Even though we didn't have action sequences in certain scenes, the story always moved forward confidently. It's a beautiful book. I really hope you enjoy it all. You guys check it out, give it a chance. And please remember, this is all Star Wars, regardless where we're checking out canon, regardless whether we go back to Legends, which no fan should live without and should discard because it was written before. Enjoy it all. It's all Star Wars. I hope you guys have a good time with this book, and I can't wait to hear your comments. Take care.